I'm very glad to be back in the studio for many reasons today. One, my old mic, I missed you. And also, my air conditioning is broken in my apartment. Oh. And so I've been melting and I'm just starting to congeal.
You're congealing? You're like Jell-O. What? That's a fact! It's a fact!
That's factual,
Sam. That's factual information.
Welcome to Podpodcastcast. Hello, and welcome to Podpodcastcast. It's a podcast where we review podcasts. I'm Sam.
I'm Honor.
And today, we're joined by a very special guest.
So special.
Super
duper special.
I know you mean that genuinely.
I do.
But it almost feels
special.
You're very special. It's Claire. It's Claire.
It's me.
It's
Claire. Hi.
We've brought Claire on to really clear up some issues between me and Honor.
Yeah, I'm your counselor. We're just going to talk about really how we're feeling today. Maybe setting some boundaries.
Yeah, I need to set a boundary.
We were talking before, and I did feel a little bit like my parents were fighting.
Yeah.
Where I'm just like, guys, it's going to be okay.
There's a lot of aggression in the studio, Claire.
No, not at all.
Okay, great.
No, not at all.
Okay. Claire's also an expert liar.
She's an actor.
That's true.
She's an expert liar. That's what they call them. Actors.
I'm a doctor.
Expert liars.
My master's is in lying, actually, so I'm so glad you had me.
I wish we were much more transparent about that as a society.
Yeah.
You know, you just see somebody on the street and you go like, liar, you know?
You just get called out all the time, Sam.
Okay, guys, I just said we weren't experiencing
Famously,
any aggression,
right?
and now I feel like that's changing.
There's a lot of emotion
do you feel
today.
safe?
Well, now I don't.
It's never a great question. Yeah, there's a lot of emotion. We're back in our old studio. It's been a long summer. Me and Honor have been apart too long. We haven't been bickering and fighting, which is really
so good to be back.
It's so good to be back. It's how we feel ourselves up.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're back in
Your
our old
love language. But it's mean words.
Yeah.
Words of affirmation, but words of meanness.
Take any love language and invert it, and that's how me and Sam communicate.
That's pretty true.
What's like the opposite of gifts?
Stealing. Yeah. See, we understand each other. That's truly the gift that me and Anna give to each other.
The gift that keeps on giving because we keep taking it.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, that's a good idea.
No!
We should do this.
I'm giving them ideas.
Speaking of things we should do, we should review some podcasts because I'm very excited. I think we have some good pods to talk about today. And I want to start with myself.
As you do. Go ahead. Go ahead.
So the pod I want to talk about today is Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. Have either of you heard of Conan O'Brien?
I have heard of.
Okay.
I've heard the name, but I just have like some random white guy that comes.
I was about to say, I think if you showed me his face, I'd be like, oh yeah, that white dude.
Phenomenal.
Right. Yeah, I think that's a pretty good and normal experience to have with Conan O'Brien. Conan O'Brien has been a late night talk show guy for like 20 years, 30 years, I think. And he's had, I think, 2 or 3 different shows. And he's just one of those guys that you see a lot. You know how there's like Jimmy Fallon and Jimmy Kimmel, but you're not really sure which is which? That's Conan O'Brien. Except he's even more distinctive. And Honor, you should really relate to him because he's part of the 1% of people that are red hair.
Is he ginger?
Oh, I thought you were meaning the 1%. I'm like, Sam.
He's probably also...
You don't know me at all.
Honor, you know how you love the wealthy?
Yeah.
You know how you love the billionaires?
Yeah.
You love capitalism. Honor's always said this. Number 1 capitalism lover, Honor.
Famously.
Yeah. So Conan O'Brien has been one of these late night host guys who's distinctive by his red hair and like weird little floof. Yes, you would recognize him if you saw him.
I'm seeing him now, yeah.
I think I'm seeing the vision.
Ginger telepathy. We're talking right now, actually.
What's he saying?
We're playing poker now.
Who's winning?
Why are you in like a chat with Conan O'Brien?
With all the gingers, not just Conan O'Brien.
The hive mind.
Yeah, that's very exciting for you, but for the rest of us, I just have to, we have to listen to his podcast.
Yeah. Catch up.
Honor's got the 24/7 podcast. Mind podcast.
Mind podcast. That's what they call telepathy.
So Conan O'Brien, in the last couple of years of his late night show, he's done. He's off the air now.
He died?
That's the only way you can exit Hollywood.
A little bit.
Is death. Yeah, so in the last couple of years of his late night run, he started this podcast called Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. So the initial premise is that Conan O'Brien has been having these conversations with celebrities. Like you get the late night talk show idea.
Sure.
We do like maybe a monologue, like a bit, and then we bring out some guy who needs to promote some movie that you don't really care about, and we need to talk about that for like 5 minutes, get a good anecdote, and we're out, right?
Okay, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So the premise is that he's been having these very shallow conversations for like 30 years, and he just says, I have no friends. No,
this is a podcast born out of desperation.
As all pods are.
Yeah.
He's like, I know everyone in Hollywood and no one is my friend. So I'm going to force people to sit down with me for about an hour and we're going to talk and they're going to be my friends. Yeah, it's really, it sounds really sad when I say it like that. It's really funny because the entire podcast is just Conan O'Brien, this very successful entertainer, just degrading himself constantly. It's awesome. It's really
kind of love that.
There's a lot of self-deprecating humor. He's like, all right, well, in this episode of Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend, still looking.
Oh my God.
That's kind of in the intro, right? Of course, Conan has kind of this dual personality that he puts up, which is, self-deprecating and also I am the greatest.
Good.
And so that's kind of the initial premise of the pod. And his personality is balanced out by Sonam Movsesian and Matt Gorley. Sonam Movsesian is his longtime personal assistant who gives him absolutely no respect.
Perfect.
And
Yeah,
Matt
love
Gorley is
one of the Gorleys?
I just love this because Honor was quiet during all of that explanation and dialogue. And then just so one of them.
He's one of the Gorleys.
One of them Gorleys?
Yeah, he's one of the Gorleys.
Perfect.
Who are the Gorleys?
No, like Gorley Pops? Like Gorley Pops?
Oh my
you
God.
get it? You understand now, Claire?
I got there.
Okay,
Thanks.
great.
Yeah.
Appreciate that.
Matt Gorley is the podcast producer and has produced other podcasts, such as we shall talk about sometime on our Pistol Shrimps Radio.
Oh my God. What?
Pistol Shrimps Radio.
It's good. I promise.
Intriguing.
Yeah. Well, also, Conan makes fun of him all the time. He's like, I hear you make these podcasts like Hibble-Goo and the Bib Flops, just because he made a bunch of podcasts that are, in that vein. And Matt's like, yeah. And so Conan is frequently playing this character of like, I'm really awesome. I'm the best. Welcome to my $1 million podcast. And so now Matt are like, suck, bro.
Perfect.
Yeah. So they all are very funny and they rib on each other. And they also occasionally have, they're just actually friends and you get to see that aspect of it especially as the pod goes on. When it starts,
as we near Conan O'Brien's death, we start to feel a little more camaraderie grow.
Everyone really feels invested because they're like, this old man could go at any moment.
Yeah. We gotta be nice to this old guy.
So yeah, as the pod goes on, it becomes really successful. It kind of shifts away from this Conan O'Brien has no friends to we're just making this very successful show. Because that Conan O'Brien has friends because he keeps Adam Sandler comes on, he's like, hey, Coney, how you doing? And Conan's like, Adam Sandler, you always drive by my house and yell, Coney! He's like, yeah, I do that. It's really good. And Conan O'Brien is very talented at what he's done for 30 years. I know, big shocker. He's a good interviewer. He's a really good, let's bring somebody in here and let's make them laugh. Let's, kind of bring out the funny in them. And just have a really good time. So this podcast is ultimately a celebrity interview podcast. And it's a very good one at that.
I'm a doubter. I've never watched a celebrity interview podcast. I feel like I'm about to get shoved out of the room by force. But I haven't. And I'm waiting for you to convince me. Because when you were like, and it's just this guy who's now really successful being successful, I'm like, I feel like I need more selling points. Because I do think it's very impressive to be a good interviewer.
Yes. Yeah, and he's very successful, like, for a reason, because I think Conan O'Brien's really funny. Claire, would you say you're a comedy fan?
I am. I would say so.
Then I think Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend is, like, definitely worth a try for you, right? So Conan interviews all kinds of people, right? He interviewed Michelle Obama. He interviewed...
Yep, you got it?
No, it's the one guy from Britain, and he was little when he came here, but now he's big.
Oh,
and
there's a lot of
like
those.
all humans who grow?
No, he was about the same
British.
size, but in monetary value, it's changed. Not Ringo.
A Beatle? What?
Paul
McCartney.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Is he still alive?
Yeah, Paul McCartney's still alive.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is Conan O'Brien still alive?
Not for long. No. Yeah. So Conan O'Brien interviews a bunch of people, from Michelle Obama to Paul McCartney, but my personal favorite interviews are when he interviews other comedians. And Conan loves comedy. And I just enjoy two comedians talking about comedy because I'm like, they're so funny. And they're talking about how funny we're.
Silly.
This is so good. I wrote down some of my favorites.
Mm-hmm.
I love the episode with Dana Carvey. Dana Carvey, famous for being on SNL, a very good impressionist.
Yep.
Did Hans and Franz, if you guys know what that is.
No.
I can imagine.
You out. that bit.
There we go.
Check you out.
Just like that on there.
Yeah.
Their episode together, so funny. So funny because they're just doing bits back and forth the whole time. Dana Carvey has his own podcast and they're talking about it, but Dana Carvey just like wants to keep doing impressions. They do a Paul Simon and John Lennon.
Okay. We're getting better with the names. We're getting there.
Great. They do one of my favorite bits of all time, which is just Dana Carvey doing an impression of Jimmy Stewart. Jimmy Stewart, the guy from It's a Wonderful Life. And I love his impression so much that I have really pushed my girlfriend to the limits on how much she can listen to me go, Mr. Gower, it's me, George Bailey. Hold on, hey, wait a minute. No, that's all wrong. No, we can't go out for Italian. It's a Friday night, it'll be jammed. No.
I have never heard you speak remotely like this.
Dude,
it's so jarring.
It's my
how
favorite.
Different it is.
It's my favorite.
I don't want to hear you
Because you like assume a position too.
Hold on. Just look at it a minute. Yeah.
Because the audio listeners can't hear, but the shoulders definitely do some movement. The head is all the way back.
I think this is my natural position. Yeah, okay.
I don't think it's far off.
Yeah, it's not that different. I truly, me and Jimmy Stewart are about the same person. Or me and Jimmy Stewart and Dana Carvey's impression of Jimmy Stewart are about the same. When I heard that bit, I almost cried. It was so good. So there's so many like that. There's the interview with Paul Rudd, which I absolutely adore because Conan keeps being like, so Paul, what do you got going? And Paul Rudd's like, Conan, what if we just sit here in this together, you know? What if we just think about?
That's beautiful.
Isn't that? You ever think about bugs? I don't remember, but they talk about
all the time.
They talk
Paul
about
Rudd
nonsense for so long.
Paul Rudd is such a normal guy who happened to become famous.
It's
and it's so good.
That's the vibes he gives off. Paul Rudd makes a reference to some long-running bit that was on the Conan O'Brien late night show, where they show like a clip, and it's one of the
I think I remember this.
Greatest payoffs in comedy. He tells him, he's like, Conan, I've been working on this project for a long time. And it's just this prank clip that they've been playing at him for years.
Good. Yes.
It's so good. So funny. There's a bunch of other funny interviews. Larry David, I especially love because I just love Larry David. Larry David and Conan also talk comedy. I also really like some of the serious interviews with people that aren't comedians, like Ron Howard. Famously Opie from the Andy Griffith Show, also a director. I like that because I learned a lot about somebody I didn't know that much about. I learned about his work. I got more context for things I did know about, and I got all these other stories. And plus, the promo at the end, I liked. I watched Ron Howard's documentary, Idea Man, on Jim Henson.
Wow, it's working!
It's working! They got
wow.
me! So, I want to talk about this pod because it's so good. My brother recommended this to me a long time ago. And whenever I just need like a decompressor pod where I'm like, I just want to like not think about anything, but I also don't need my total like brain rot pods, you know? I want kind of something that's a little goofy, but is engaging and kind of grounding. Conan O'Brien is great for that. I recently moved house twice in 1 week, and that was a tough experience, but I'm just like, all right, let's go. Sona, Matt, Conan, we're going to it, you know? And there's so many episodes. There's so much content. I got to give a quick shout out to the people making the Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend Wikipedia page.
Oh.
Whoa.
Rushing it. One of my favorite parts. One, you know how when you go on a Wikipedia page and sometimes they'll put up warnings? No warnings. Perfect page. 2, every episode starts with the celebrity who comes on. They read, I feel blank about being Conan O'Brien's friend.
That's
And
really
so
funny.
The people on the Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend Wikipedia page have cataloged all of the answers.
Gosh.
Perfect.
Yes.
Which is fantastic. And they range from Will Ferrell being awkward, Dax Shepard being very optimistic,
Not happy.
Nice.
Optimistic.
Timothy Olyphant feels meh. Jeff Goldblum feels, well, I feel, be truthful. And I feel, well, to be the extent that we're friends, I feel like we have a deep connection, but I wish we'd spend more time together. I'm available to grow your friendship however time gets in. That goes on for like another minute. So good.
I love that
Awesome.
that's like the fortune cookie. Like that determines Conan O'Brien's whole week. Just like that one word is the rest of Conan O'Brien's day.
What does it mean when Kumail Nanjiani says he's apologetic about being Conan O'Brien's
God.
friend? How do you process that?
What?
This podcast is, I gotta say, a slam dunk. It's a great celebrity interview podcast. It really brings out the best in celebrities, I think. I really focus on celebrities that I know, and I think that's probably the best way to experience this podcast. I think a lot of people get in it for Conan and will listen to like every episode despite who the guest is. And I'm like half there. I'll listen to celebrities I'm like, I kind of know this person, but I won't listen to celebrities who I'm like, yeah, I have no idea who this person is. I don't need to know about what movie they're making. But so Conan does a great job of bringing comedy out of all these people, especially other comedians. Total romps. Almost any of the first early episodes, put a big comedian in there, put Will Ferrell, put John C. Reilly. They crush it every time, and it's hilarious. They're so fun and funny together. Conan O'Brien, great. Sonam Movsesian, Matt Gorley, the co-host of this podcast, also fantastic. They get on great guests. I would say this is a good pod. I'm going to go ahead and say this is a...
He's waving his hands around like an
Let it out.
excited little monkey.
It's a 4 out of 5 O'Briens, I would say. It's a 4 out of 5 floofy haircuts.
Wow.
It's a good pod. It really is. It's a fun time. I think
Impressive.
especially more recently, it's okay. I don't care so much about every other week they have a Conan O'Brien Needs a Fan where they talk to the fans they call in. And I'm like, whatever.
Yeah.
But I think also, especially for me, the guests that I like more have been in the past. Other famous comedians and actors that I really like. So if you're looking for a pod, I'd recommend go ahead and checking out Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. Scroll back in the logs, in the tomes. Find
The
archives. Find a celebrity that you like or that you think is funny and just put it on play. Skip through the ads. The ads are too long.
Always.
I have a question.
What's up, Claire?
Now, you've listened to this podcast. You also participate in a podcast with someone who is also ginger.
Yeah.
And it's 1%. If there could only be one, who's got to go?
You're asking if he likes
Would
me
you rather?
or Conan O'Brien more?
Well, in the podcasting sphere.
And also, Honor, forget not that the logic is
There's only 1% of people that aren't gingers.
So you must eliminate.
So you have to get rid of one.
There's too many in your life. Cut them out.
1% of gingers. Who's got to go?
Yeah, Sam. Who's got to go?
Conan, call me. I'll be on your podcast.
Speaking of podcast, Otter, which one did you bring?
I feel betrayed. So, the podcast I'm going to talk about, I would say I'm going to phrase this whole thing as less of a review and more of an invitation, maybe?
Hey, Honor.
Yeah.
I'm deeply scared and confused.
I'm so glad.
Continue.
I was like, is it like a formal party or a secondary location? What type of invitation?
Oh, I'm just inviting people to come have a good time in the digital sphere with me and listen to this podcast. Because the podcast that I'm going to talk about is called Birds of Empire. It is... Yeah.
Regal.
Yeah. It is a... How would I define it? I think I would say high fantasy in genre in a lot of ways. But it is... I think they call it post-historical. It's kind of like post-apocalyptic, but it's not like... It's not like apocalypse, like there's radiation everywhere. It's like the society as we know it disappeared. Like something happened. And new civilizations are forming again. I think technically it takes place in either North or South Dakota, but it's like that's completely
spookiest of places.
Yeah. But it's like that's completely irrelevant because none of them know that North or South Dakota existed.
Sorry, I thought that was going to be a slam dunk on the Dakotas. I thought you'd be like, North and South Dakota, that's irrelevant because they're irrelevant. So true.
We love you, Dakotans.
Shout out to the Dakotans.
Anyways, so there, like I said, it's like society went away, gone, and now new ones are popping up. And so it is kind of this interesting mix of like technologies are being reinvented. They're kind of going through these like Stone Age, Bronze Age, like whatever again. You kind of get that vibe, but also like these societies did exist before, so it feels like they have certain advancements like intellectually and technology and societal structure that like, you know, the cavemen didn't have.
Honor, what is the format of this pod? Is this an audio drama? Is this like a history podcast but for fake history?
It is an audio drama. It is like one of their points of pride is that it's extremely immersive as far as like the audioscape they create, and it's really masterfully done. They do put a warning at the beginning of episodes where they're like, this is an immersive audio experience. It might sound like things are coming from behind you or to the sides of you.
I'm scared all over again.
I know.
Oh my gosh.
No. So I first heard that and I was like, okay, you're pretentious. Calm down. I'm going to keep listening. And I was like,
it's a bit much.
No, maybe like, okay. I kind of get it. Because that is really what they go for, is this all around, like, you sound like you're in the place that this is happening.
One of the Dakotas?
Yeah, one of the Dakotas.
Does that add something for you? Does that immersion aspect?
Yeah.
Okay.
I think especially, like I said, it feels fairly high fantasy in genre, even if it's not like there's elves and dwarves, like, running around.
What are there? Is it just people, but now they're future people?
So
are they birds?
Are they birds?
Some of them are. Yes. There's 4 tribes.
Very pro-bird on this side of the table.
We were very excited about that.
There's 4 tribes. One of them is called the birds, the wolves, the rams, and the bears. And yeah, Sam?
Let's go Chicago Bears. They're going to get the Super Bowl this year.
Get out of here.
I'm sure you will.
Ditka's got it, good boys. Come on. Let's go.
Meanwhile, I was focused on the wolves and like the warrior cat furry wolf pipeline.
Yep.
They're on horses, funnily enough.
Are they wolves, though?
No. And I'm going to say a lot of things that are vague. Like, I'm not sure what's going on in this podcast.
Honor loves this podcast, by the way.
I love this podcast. I'll get to it. there's kind of this implication that there are certain physical, like, kind of superpowers that are emerging in either as a trend among, like, the whole of a tribe, or, like, one of the main characters we meet is a member of the wolf tribe, and she has an incredibly strong sense of smell. And there is very much this mystical aspect of each tribe, like, their belief and mythology is that they're descended from, like, the great bear, like...
Sure.
You know, these animal spirits, forefathers. And so there's a very strong presence of this mythology to the extent that every other episode, they have an episode that's with the characters in the story, and then they switch and they do an episode that's, like, just narrated, but it is like a telling of one of their myths, basically.
Huh.
Which I really love because it, like, deepens the world and you get an idea of, like, these societies' beliefs without, like, them having to find a way to interject that, especially if you are doing a format where you're really going for that immersive, like, you get the whole soundscape of an environment. You don't really want to just sit there and have someone tell a story, even if that would work in other formats of, like, okay, Peepaw's telling a story now. It gets boring
time
if you're in this sort of, like, you're hearing everything happen environment.
So, is there, like, an overall plot here, or is it like we're building a world for world building's sake?
I haven't listened to this whole podcast.
How long is it?
I believe it's finished now. I actually didn't know because start at the beginning. I first found this podcast through the podcast studio that does it, Q Code, who I want to listen to a lot more of their podcasts. I had, like, just started when I listened to Birds of Empire. I just started doing, like, a deep dive into, I want to listen to their whole library, and then life got crazy, so I stopped. But at the time that I listened to it, they had released this, you could call it a season of 8 episodes that was before the full series was going to release. They were releasing these episodes to introduce you to the world, to the main characters that they were going to be introducing. So at that point, you start to get a sense of, because these characters start to interlink as you go through these episodes, and so you start to get a sense of, okay, here's the conflicts they're setting up, here's where this might be going. But they really just start with, let's introduce you to these people and their culture and what they have going on. And I really liked that they did it. It's like an hour episode for each. There's a character from each tribe. So it's an hour episode for each of them, and then in between are, like I said, those myth episodes that are shorter. I think they're about 20 minutes.
Honor, which faction would you be a part of?
How
do you identify? What's your persona, Honor?
Famously, I like wolves. So that was my immediate reaction when I read the episode titles, and it says, like, it said each of them. But I also really like the bears because they eat fish and they play around in the water, and I love, like, rivers and oceans, and, you know.
Honor is your bear. I don't know if you like. I think it's so obvious when I look at her. It's just like bear.
Really?
Yes, you remind me of. You know that one movie where there's a guy, but he becomes a bear, and he has to go on a quest with, like, his bear family to become back to
Brother
be a man.
Bear? Is this Brother Bear?
Yeah.
Yeah, I see that for you.
Okay.
Yeah, you could be in that
this.
movie. You may not be Brother Bear, but you could be in that movie.
You could be one of the extras.
Yeah, I'll be an extra. The bear episode was also one. I cried listening to that episode because they got me attached to these characters very quickly.
Sure.
Which is impressive.
Yes, it is impressive. It, like I said, is a 1 hour episode where, because they don't meet each other yet, it's clear that these characters are going to, but you're meeting each of them in their, like, own homes. So it's 1 hour with this character, and I got attached enough that I cried. But it's very well done. The sound design is just impeccable. I really adore the script writing. I think some people think it's a little... I can get why not everyone would like it. It almost has this... To me, it reminds me of Shakespeare. And why, when Shakespeare is performed well, I really love it because it does have this like flowery, poetic language that's very expressive, but also is like people call each other crazy insults all the time, and like
So awesome.
actually
Phenomenal.
Shakespeare is pretty casual, so it's not using like these and thous, it's vernacular it's easy to follow.
Sure,
But it does
it's
kind of have
elevated.
that nature. Yeah. And it's a little rhythmic. Which also definitely adds to like it has that high fantasy feel of the way they talk. A little bit, yeah. I personally really love it. Like I said, I can get why some people might, like it might sound stiff to them, a little artificial, but I really adore it. So, like I said, I listened to this first season where it introduced us to the characters, and then the rest of it hadn't come out yet. So I hadn't listened to it. I went and listened to other things. I found out like a couple weeks ago that, because also more time has passed than I thought in my brain. I thought I had listened to this like not that long ago. Apparently it's been like 2 years.
Oh my gosh.
So... But the rest of it is out. I want to listen to it and will be listening to it.
Yeah.
I'm just giving a review for the part that was out and I listened to and got me hooked.
Right. Sounds like you have some catching up to do.
Yeah, I do.
But you're inviting us to come along.
I'm inviting you to come along with me.
I forgot that this was an invitation.
It's always an invitation.
I'm less confused.
Are you
but still scared.
RSVPing?
Yeah.
Are you coming to the function?
I'll check my calendar. So,
Yeah.
it sounds like you love this pod. How would you rate this? How many brother bears would you give it?
How many brothers out of bear?
Yeah. It is hard to do before I've like gotten into the main, plot, but it really does seem like a podcast that's meant to be about the characters more than the plot. Like characters in world building, which world building's kind of that intersection. It is, I think, important to mention, they really value like diversity and representation.
Sure.
And it's very clear, which is something I care about a lot, but I'm pretty sure there's not a single white person on their cast. It's all people of color, and they also have like social commentaries in their societies and stuff. It's cool.
Sure.
So that's another aspect I like.
They've got themes they want to talk about, which
They got
is
themes they want to talk about.
awesome. I love something that's silly and exists to exist and be like,
Mhm.
I wanted to think of this thing, but it's also, really enriching when you're like, I've got something I want to talk about. I've got something that's important, and that is more than just a piece of fiction for fiction's sake.
Yeah, which I just think is really a part of, you can tell people cared so much about making this. So I think critically speaking, like as far as the plot, I could see it maybe not being as strong plot-wise.
Sure.
And so critically speaking, people might not rate it very high. I don't think that will matter to me. And it didn't in listening to the other part. I would say 4 tribes.
All 4.
5.
Oh, wait.
Okay,
there's
yeah,
5.
okay, perfect.
My bad.
Yeah.
4 to 5 tribes.
Which
There's
one
a
are we
missing
picking
tribe
out?
somewhere.
Yeah.
Somewhere,
Who are we picking
yeah.
out? That's
Yeah.
That's awesome, Honor.
Oh
I'm
my
excited
God.
to lose your invitation in the mail and see how it goes for you.
I'm so excited.
We might have to listen to that one together. We'll see.
Yeah.
That could be really interesting.
Yeah, and it's not super long. 20 episodes is what they
Okay.
put out after the
Sure.
8-episode
long
intro.
is your podcast, Sam?
Conan O'Brien Needs a
Yes.
Friend. Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend.
How many eps?
It's like 500 episodes.
Holy
Okay.
Well, but it,
I guess that's fair.
right. It's I'll listen to 1 or 2 of these, and then then I'll be at work or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So awesome, Honor.
Yay.
Claire,
Yeah.
Claire.
what have you brought to us?
I'm here to talk about my favorite podcast. Ever since Through the Grapevine, I've heard about Podpodcastcast. I'm so ready to talk about this podcast. I would like to preface this by saying that all podcasting, all of that, like what your favorites are, that's all arbitrary. I'd also like to preface this by saying this is the best podcast.
Yes.
No, I am coming in a little strong. I have brought to the table
I'm curious.
another Dungeons and Dragons podcast.
We shall never be rid of the curse.
No, you are
Veneer has
trapped.
cursed us.
Perfect.
I'm here to. It's not. I'm not special. I've not like delved through the trenches. This is the Adventure Zone. I don't know how
I have heard
how
of
you've.
this.
I've heard of.
I love this podcast.
Oh, that's awesome.
So this is the first Dungeons and Dragons podcast that I got into. I don't think it was my first podcast, but it was definitely one of the things that got me into the podcasting sphere. And I think a lot of it is because the people who do it, it's the McElroy family, very notorious in the world. Sam has left the building.
My brother, and me, they're everywhere.
Yeah.
The McElroy Brothers are everywhere.
Everywhere.
And have a D&D podcast.
They do.
I was a fool and did not realize.
Yes. So for context, yes, as you were aware, My Brother and Me is one of their comedy podcasts. And then one of them, I didn't have a baby, but wife had a baby. And so for one... Yes, Sam? Nothing. Continue. And so for one of the weeks while he was on maternity leave, they just did like a fun, silly one-off. And it's really interesting to see the way it developed because people were like, we love this so much. Do more of it. And they were like, well, I guess we have to now. I would like to clarify, for those who do know what I'm talking about, they have run several different campaigns. I'm focusing specifically on balance because, and I'm going to say this to a digital storytelling major, I think it may be one of the best stories ever told.
I've heard this.
Oh, it's so good.
I've been recommended.
Oh, it's so good.
Also,
balance.
that's an insane claim to make.
Yes, it is.
Of a Dungeons and Dragons
Yes, it is.
podcast.
Yep, yes, it is.
This is in my niche, so it'll work.
I love this medium so dearly. I have truly a hard time believing that one of the greatest stories ever told
is...
I don't.
Thank you, Honor.
Yeah.
One of us got the invitation.
Yeah.
One of us didn't. Where'd it go?
Claire and I are gonna go hang out after this, and Sam isn't invited anymore.
No, you can come, I guess. My mom said I was only allowed to have 10 people, and I already invited 9 of my other friends. So, okay. But so this podcast, it's really interesting because they start with a book. They start with the I guess I should introduce the people. Griffin McElroy, who is their dungeon master. Justin McElroy, who plays the wizard, Taco.
It's a good name.
Thank you. I didn't make it. Travis McElroy, who plays Magnus Burnsides. And
it's a good name.
Still didn't make it. And the only player who is not in My Brother and Me, their dad, Clint
I forgot he was
McElroy, who plays Merle Highchurch, the cleric. And so Griffin McElroy, initially these were all mostly like largely pre-written characters. They follow very stereotypical, like, okay, you're the running in guy because you're the fighter, that type of thing. And that is because originally this was just supposed to be a one-off thing. And then, so the first arc where they're really figuring things out and really taking it super not seriously because they don't know that it's a big thing yet is called Here There Be Gerblins. It's very, very classic D&D. But I will say listening back to it, which is something that I've started doing, there's those little inklings of like finding these characters and building these stories. And so then as it grows, there are 69 total episodes. They're each, I want to say, about an hour long, which is not bad for a D&D podcast.
No, not at all.
I might even say reasonable.
Whoa, a little bit. I love this podcast for a lot of reasons. I think it is because you talked about you love a little funny guy.
I love a little funny guy.
And they started in comedy podcasts. And so they are very funny and very entertaining. And especially as someone who it's such a low barrier to entry for Dungeons and Dragons, which is kind of remarkable because a lot of D&D podcasts, as someone who has listened to Critical Role and loves it, it's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot of work. And so you're coming in and these people have no idea what they're doing.
Right.
And like, I think that is especially what the dad represents even throughout the entire podcast. He's like, I rolled a 4. Is that good? And I love it because I think it is such an accurate representation of how you can still love the medium, love the storytelling, and have no clue what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I think Griffin is a very good storyteller. And the one thing that I wrote it down in my notes, I didn't write a lot of notes, but the one thing that I wrote, which is that these people have been doing podcasts with each other for years and it shows. They have the ability to know when to cut off a bit. They have the ability to know when to get serious, when to take those story beats that I think is really, really fascinating, and they jump off of each other super well.
My Brother and Me is truly one of like the most popular podcasts.
For a reason, I may even say.
And it's insane that it is three brothers. Because I love you, my brothers. It's just so wild that, you know, that you could do that with your family to me. Especially also, if you're going to have a Dungeons and Dragons podcast, bringing your dad in is a next level move.
Can I
add? Is crazy. For sure. Sucks to be you, I guess. My siblings and I have talked about starting a podcast for years, and I think it'd be awesome.
Don't get me wrong, we have to.
Awesome. Dad in D&D.
I would love to add a little bit of context, because I don't think you guys know how wild it is. The thing about the dad, though, is that he's more crazy. There's a whole bit where he's the cleric and he forgets the name of the like guy that he's supposed to follow, so he just picks Pan because it's the shortest, which then devolves into him having a bit where he seduces plants. For sillies, I promise it's a good podcast, guys. But I think the thing that really I love about this podcast is it is like at an individual episode level, it's super engaging, it's super fun. It is also, like, I have stayed up till 4 a.m. listening to the podcast, sobbing. Like, it is such the story that it tells overall. Because at the beginning, especially, you get all of this, like, silly goofs. And then Griffin takes these goofball characters and is like, here's how I'm going to wrench your heart out. I don't know what the, like, spoiler level that I can bring to the podcast is. Yes.
Entering spoiler section.
Beautiful work. I would like to, and I mean this from the bottom of my heart. If you have not listened to this podcast and you ever plan to, wait, are you guys going to do this?
Yeah.
Because I was going to say, turn away. A lot of it dives into the backstory. And there is some, like, incredible character moments, especially with redemption from a lot of these. At one point, one of the things that they have to recover, I just remember this because this was such a beautiful story beat for me. They have to recover this chalice, I believe, that essentially gives them the ability to go back in time and correct a past mistake. And you have to kind of like fight against this urge to do that. Like you have to fight against the chalice. And the way that we delve back into their backstory, this is the spoilers. So the one that really got me is because I think it's, you go from like having these super silly characters who aren't one-dimensional by any means, but you don't fully know them as they are. And then you see one of them have to battle with the ability to save their wife and like their whole world. And it's just a really well done emotional podcast to do with your family and your dad, and also it's D&D. That's balance. That's what I believe the best story ever told. I don't want to get too far into it.
There's more?
Okay, so that's the first one. The second one is called Amnesty. I would say, for the people listening at home, if they're invested, and also for you guys, if you're invested in getting into it, I think you would like it a lot, Honor. It's cryptids.
That's cool. I've been told I would like Amnesty. No one ever explained.
It's cryptid related. It is at a ski resort, and it's they use for the nerds. They use Monster of the Week, so it's a little bit of a different thing. Yes.
Cryptid also meaning like spooky monsters, unexplained phenomenon type stuff.
A cryptid means a creature that is not confirmed to be real or fake. Thank you.
You're both right, guys. Please stop fighting.
Never.
So there is, but there's your Mothman, there's your werewolves, and it's just very good, especially when they play characters who aren't like they play characters who aren't men. They play characters who aren't straight. It's just it's a very interesting. Why are you laughing, Sim?
I just thought it was funny the way you said that. Not men,
not straight.
How could they be?
It's a really well done podcast. Also, I feel the need to mention two little niche things, which is Griffin also writes, to my knowledge, they may have branched out, writes all of the music for the show.
What?
And it's
is there a lot?
So there is at the beginning, similar to you guys have your little intro, and then at one point during the Crystal Kingdom arc, he uses a Vocaloid to create a song that's canon to like it's what the players are hearing.
I love when a D&D podcast has a song that actually happened in the thing.
And it's really...
Dude,
it's also...
what? Is this like a phenomenon that happens a lot?
Yeah.
Okay. Never mind. Continue.
Sam's not with it. He didn't get
Sam's
the
not with
invitation.
it.
But it's just... And also it's just like really good music. Like I will get pumped for it. It's great.
It always is.
The other thing, just for you guys in particular, their like talkback shows are called the Adventure Zone Zones.
The Talkback Show?
Yeah, so that's the other
Sam,
part.
this is basic D&D podcasting.
Come on.
The Talkback Show is the show where they talk about the show, like how this is the podcast where we talk about other podcasts.
Why is there a show where they talk about the show?
So that they can, in meta, be like, oh yeah, this was like a cool moment, or like this is what I was trying to do.
So,
they don't have to interrupt the game.
So,
yeah, but
okay, I'm going to interrupt you right there.
Thank you, Claire.
So, as someone who's listened, I will say, I have not listened to all of the Adventure Zone zones, but the few that I have listened to have been very interesting, especially hearing from the Dungeon Master's perspective, because it's like, here's this really cool thing that I thought out that you just didn't do. And that's okay, and like you chose a different thing. Or this one time they made, like the characters made a choice, and then after they recorded, I'm like, just anecdotes, they were like, I really didn't like that choice. And he was like, do you just want to do it again? And I think that's really beautiful.
Oh, run it back.
Just run it back. I think it's really beautiful that like they're like aware of that and like the tone that they want to set, because there is such a good balance between like, this is hard hitting emotions, but also this is like, we're still being goofy and having a good time. The last point that before the questions, is if for the people who don't want to commit to all of that, which is definitely fair, they do have live shows, which I had the pleasure of seeing live. Equally phenomenal. I know, such a little flex in a really small group.
Dude, the hair flip, I mean, that was such a perfect way to emphasize that.
Yeah, and they have the same amount of chemistry on stages off. But what I will say is, if you're not, it's like an hour long, maybe 2 hours sometimes, because they're a little bit longer. There are individual stories. So like, if you really need to know if these guys are funny, which totally fair, Adventure Zone Hootenanny. It's like a space cowboy thing. Hootenanny.
I love a hootenanny.
Honor beaming ear to ear right now.
I'm Oklahoman.
That is the one I got to see live. So it was an honor. But yes, I did look up synonyms for honor before this, because I didn't want to bring you into it. It was a privilege to be able to see it live. But I know, I love this podcast.
I appreciate your effort.
Thank you. Also, for the people who love a monologue, every once in a while, Griffin ends it with like the classic, here's what the characters see, but what they don't see.
Oh, good.
I love it. I love it so much. And I can recite like 2 of them from memory. They're so good. They're so beautiful.
Claire, this sounds awesome. And
Such a good podcast.
You've kind of sold me on the Adventure Zone as my next D&D podcast, because it's kind of long-ish, but like 1 hour up. Pish posh.
Yeah.
I can do that easy money. You know,
we need to expand your horizons.
What is your horizons? You got a couple
like 20
in there?
episodes.
Oh,
that's how much he wants, and he wants it to be done. Yeah.
See, you know, I think that's cool. I think actually I'm cool.
Can I admit something?
Yeah.
So after Amnesty, there's like 4 or 5 more seasons.
Whoa.
Yeah. And okay. And they're good. But I haven't listened to all of them. I just think you gotta listen to the first 2 and then go from there if it's your thing. But the first 2 are just so good.
I think that's totally fine to not have listened to all 5 seasons.
Yeah.
Dungeons & Dragons is fun. It's good. There is perhaps too much of it.
It's so much.
No such thing. A little bit.
Yeah.
But it's incredible work. It's a lot.
Claire, this sounds like an awesome podcast. Mm-hmm. What would you rate it in your experience? And and it seems like you're focused in here on season 1 balance. Was that a good joke? Sorry.
Yeah, man.
Okay, I get your joke.
Yeah.
5 out of 5 stars. The podcast. Yeah, 5 adventures out of zone. I can't.
go. A perfect pod.
I can't.
A perfect
And
pod.
it doesn't have to be a perfect pod for you, but for me, a perfect pod.
That's awesome.
A perfect
That's so awesome. It would have been great if you were like, it's probably like a 2.5. Greatest story ever told.
But it's
2.
fine.
Yeah, that's awesome. I've seen the Adventure Zone floating around,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm interested.
I think it's time.
You have the invitation.
Yeah.
You're gonna not lose this one, Sam? Sam?
Sam?
Sam, please?
I'm looking for it, guys. I've got a lot of mail on my desk right now.
Among which, is there perhaps an email?
Yes, there is, Honor. Thank you for asking.
You're welcome.
I'm going to head over to podpodcastcast@gmail.com. We're going to check out the inbox there. Last episode, we asked for recommendations for podcasts for us to listen to. Listeners, please email us your recommendations. We want to know more podcasts. Claire's given us good recs. You can do that over the email. Let us know. We're planning out the next podcast we're going to start listening to, the next few book clubs.
Yep.
We want to know what you think. We want to explore some other podcasts. If you don't, it's only going to be that Andrew Tate podcast.
And that's it.
I don't want to review Joe Rogan.
That's all we're doing till Christmas.
I don't want to do it.
On Christmas, you get one nice episode if you've been a good kid.
One indie pod.
No more Dungeons and Dragons, kid. It's the big league.
No,
Read
please.
the email.
All right, so I'll go. I usually read the emails before we start, but I haven't read this one, so we're just going to go ahead and get into it. Greetings, Honor and Sam of Podpodcastcast. You know at this point approximately how dear you are. Okay, great start. Recently, you solicited podcast recommendations from your viewers. If you recall, we previously mentioned that we vegans maintain a communal tier list of our favorite podcasts. This information is not normally disclosed outside vegan circles. However, we have elected to make an exception in this case. With that in mind, please enjoy this selection of podcasts from the S tier.
I will say, as a vegetarian, I can kind of get into it. I can be your way in.
Whoa.
To veganism?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right, go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's good because they just sent us a bunch of links. And they don't say what the links are for, so I'm opening all of them.
That's awesome.
It's
just like Spotify links.
Yup.
That's rad.
Okay.
Forward to the podcast, Sam.
Yeah, Sam? You want to share with the class, Sam?
Oh, fuck. Sorry. The first podcast is Veggie Tales. Very veggie silly stories.
Oh, they're silly stories.
The second one is a tomato a fruit or a vegetable?
And I've always wondered.
The Shrek podcast.
The Shrek podcast?
Temporary podcast Title 2 channel. And Metal Pie.
Well, I was going to bring that one in. Oh, shucks.
Oh my gosh.
But you know what's scary? There's probably a listener at home going, VeggieTales? Yeah, that sounds really interesting. Yeah, sounds good.
The email continues.
Okay.
And this podcast is F tier for obvious reasons we think you two would enjoy.
Oh, great.
And that podcast is Cheese.
Okay.
Sincerely, all vegans. Thank you, vegans.
Thanks, vegans.
Thanks for opening up the tier list. That was...
Yeah, I guess we should be complimented because they opened the tier list to us.
Yeah.
This exclusive knowledge. I still feel rage in my heart.
And also, the vegans, thank you, vegans. All vegans that are listening.
Thank you, all vegans.
Not even just listening, all.
Thank you, all
vegans.
vegans. Well, I know that they're all listening if one is listening.
Oh,
as the
hive
hive mind
mind.
works.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I'm really glad I didn't open this email earlier because it was truly enjoyable to open up a bunch of links and assumedly nonsense podcasts that no one has ever listened to. I wonder, real quick, what is Metal Pipe about?
Is it real or is it just the sound of a metal pipe falling?
It is 2 seconds of metal pipe falling.
That's awesome.
That's really excellent.
5 stars.
5 stars.
5 stars. S tier podcast.
Yeah.
Does that make you feel better about being in their S tier? Does that make you feel better about being in their S tier or worse?
You're on par with VeggieTales and Metal Pipe.
VeggieTales awesome. Metal Pipe, I don't know.
I feel good about Metal Pipe. Metal Pipe makes me feel awesome.
Okay, perfect. Well, we are awesome.
We are.
We're a perfect podcast. You heard it here first.
Yeah.
And listeners, if you want to tell us how awesome we are, you can email in at podpodcastcastpod@gmail.com. But what you really should do is, I know you're listening to this on your little pod zone, little pod interface, little pod catcher. There we go.
There you go.
Leave us a review. You can probably leave us a review here if you're on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podcast Addict. Leave us a review. Put 5 stars. Write anything you want after that.
5 stars?
5 stars. I don't care what you want after that. Give us a 5-star review. Tell us.
Half of a star?
No, put
0.5.
5 stars.
Oh, I thought you said give us 0.5 stars.
Or
Please,
give
we'll
us
take anything we can get.
Or give us 0.5 stars.
Do not give us 0.5 stars. Do not listen to the devils on my shoulder. Ignore them. Give us 5 stars and then tell us how bad we are.
Give us 5 stars.
Yeah.
It's the angel.
Follow us on your podcatchers. Let us know what you want to hear from next. Let us know what podcast we should review. And let us know how awesome Claire is. Because Claire is awesome. Claire, thank you for coming.
No, thank you for
being on.
having me.
A delight.
It's
a
been
delight.
a pleasure and not an honor.
That's what I do.
I'm so glad you looked up synonyms.
I can pull him up. Hold on.
Let's close out on some synonyms of honor.
Okay, wait, hold on. I closed my tab. Hold on.
Honor, thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Sam.
It's been good.
No, not thank you, honor. Thank you, integrity. Thank you. Oh, now I have antonyms. Thank you, shame. Thank you. Thank you.
That's
thank
my
you.
Darkiplier.
Thank you. Acknowledge.
And we'll see you on the next episode of a Podpodcastcast. Goodbye.
Bye.